We've had now, I think this is the seventh entrepreneurial forum. Ideally, when we started it was that we get to know what problems you have, and then we match you with some of the solution providers. And so we've been having so many questions from several groups, including the World Bank, which is going to present on January 17th. How can we help? And then every month when we sit here, people listen and then they go. Then they come to me, who have you isolated from the group to work with? So actually nobody has come, or very few have come with serious problems, maybe like, this is what I plan to do, what do you think the business model should be, or what, how do I go about a business plan, how do I have this idea, how do we move it? I know some people have moved several steps. Some have ideas, but they don't know what to do. And they have come here, they have met some people, especially younger developers, and worked with them and come up with the product. Now they are moving towards the market. So if you are new, this forum was meant to actually provide solutions, to the younger Kenyans who are trying to figure out maybe the financing, maybe the technical help, maybe some help, maybe some advice. But what I've discovered is that everybody wants to do it very privately. That is okay. But if once you listen, you say, okay, this is what I was thinking. So that we don't just come and entertain you every month. And we must have some outcome. We must have some outcome that after listening to this for this number of years, we did this, I've come up with this. That would give us more motivation to continue. When Dr. Gashigi presented here, a lot of people expressed interest, especially in the area of manufacturing. We prepared everything. Nobody showed up at the university. Nobody showed up at the university. So I'm just challenging you that it's good that we speak every month, but also let's move a few steps ahead from what we've been doing. So as we wait, maybe, would you want to hear who are here? Some are completely, you don't want? Yeah? Yeah? Even myself, I introduce myself. Sure. So I start, my name is Bitange Ndemo. I've been running this project with my friend here, Nekesa, if you can say the name, and then we go like this. This is how you keep the chief guest waiting. Kumbe unangoja watu waingie, you know. Bas. Now, I said a good mix because there are people here who have micro-insurance, whom we need to tell that those who have poultry need insurance, micro-insurance, those who have livestock need insurance. Micro-insurance can cut across everything. We have people here with a lot of money who wants to talk to those who are aspiring to get there. We have consultants here. I know there are a number of people here who are looking for developers, and this is actually a networking place, but we want to take this network a little further and begin to, like they say, the rubber begins to hit the road, meaning that we begin to do things that would show, not just listening. So with these few remarks, I want to request Kahumbu, who was the founder of iCow, and say this because I'm so happy. I'm the one who came to launch it when it came to being. I've been marketing it globally. Everywhere I speak, I talk about iCow. I was speaking last week in Mauritius, and I was talking about productivity in Kenya. I spoke about iCow, I spoke about other apps. Even foreigners now are looking to see how they can begin to meet our developers and our entrepreneurs like Sue Kahumbu. So Sue, Karibu, these are your people. You can see these are young farmers. Karibu.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ndemo. And thank you all for coming. Wow, surprising. And what a mix. What a mix. I don't know if I'm going to satisfy everybody's curiosities, but I hope that when we get to the question and answer session, I do. I'm really, really happy to see that there are a lot of young farmers here. Can I just do a hand poll on ages? How many people are between 20 and 30 here? Just fantastic. Fantastic. I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to stop right there. The reason for asking is that one of the biggest problems we're having globally with farming is that the farming communities are aging. In Japan, the farming community is right up into the 72-year bracket. In Kenya, we've got a statistic of about 55. One of the purposes of the work that I do is to encourage young people to come into agriculture. It is the core pillar of existence of humanity, food, production of food. And if we begin to lose our farmers as we are globally at the pace we are, we're heading for trouble. And we're seeing that with food price spikes all over the world. We're seeing that with famine. Climate change is not helping. So if we can leverage on technology to bring young people into farming, then we've got a chance at least really growing the economy of our country, and if we can then spread this into other countries, help food security across the planet. So I'm really happy, very, very happy. I'm going to start with a little bit about myself. How did I get into agriculture? I think that every single person in this room is more educated than I am when it comes to your formal education. I ran away from school when I was 18. I went to sing. I wanted to be a singer, so I joined a band and I went to Mombasa and I sang for many years and I loved it. And I've done everything in music. I've sang, I've recorded records, I learned to play instruments, and it's still one of my greatest passions. The word passion for me is really important, and I heard a gentleman in the back there mention that he's a passionate farmer. I think that when you follow your passions, you will be successful. So that's, for me, the easiest route into any industry. When I came into the space of agriculture, I fell into it backwards, literally. I was in South Africa. I was busy doing a completely uninteresting job in a supermarket, and it was a convenience store supermarket. And on the weekends, I used to travel around. I was staying in a gated community, which is very unlike where I was brought up in Nairobi. I was brought up on a farm in Karen, and we had a farm in Njoro. My father was a farmer. My mother was a farmer as well. And South Africa, for me, was very constricting. The environment I was living in, I'd never lived in such a closed environment before. So on the weekends, we used to go out and travel around the countryside. And we came across a hydroponic farm. This was using, how many of you know about hydroponics? Yeah, okay, a few do. So hydroponics uses, it's a form of agriculture where you don't use soil. You can grow in any other medium that you can sterilize. So the crops are actually grown in kokoto, the stuff we have on our roads. The nutrient feed is mixed in water. It's drip fed down the beds of kokoto, which are at a slight angle. In this case, it was lettuce that were being grown in these beds. The water was then drained into a tank at the bottom, recycled into the top. The nutrient levels, again, were measured. And this was a process of feeding the plants. And by the time people were harvesting those plants, the roots were completely clean. There was no soil. You could sterilize the medium, which meant that you didn't have pests and bugs. And you ended up with very clean crops. My interest was what happened later. The salads were then taken, and they were washed, and they were spun, and they were packed, and they were supplying, at that point in time, a very fast-growing new sector of fast foods. So Nando's and Steers and all of those industries were getting pre-packed ready salads to use in their fast food outlets. The idea of washing salads and then preparing them was against the idea of fast food. They needed things that they were able to give to consumers very, very quickly. That interested me. The other thing that interested me was that in a very small space, a lot of crops were being grown. I mean, the area I looked at was less than half an acre, yet they were producing for the entire Nando's region in Joburg. And I thought, well, what if we bring that technology to Kenya, into our high density areas, into Kawangware, into Kibera, into areas where land is scarce, but maybe we could start producing food in these areas at a very, cost effectively and in a small space. So when we came back to Kenya, we started some trials in Kenya. Remember, I came back as a singer. I didn't know anything about agriculture. I'd seen a farm and I thought it was really groovy. I thought the technology was great. Let's try it. So I started practicing and with my family set up a small trial in Karen and bought a packet of seeds for 100 shillings. They were lettuce seeds. Grew them in a sand bed that we'd got these plastic trays with sand in them, and then started feeding them nutrient feed, waiting for them to grow into healthy lettuce and waiting to scale this project across Kenya and become very successful. And we failed abysmally. We failed because we didn't have any knowledge about what was actually happening. The sand we were using, the salts we were putting in as nutrient feed were accumulating and stunting the plants. And after about 2 months, our lettuce should have been ready for harvest almost. They were stunted. They were about this big. So we abandoned the whole idea and put the plants into the soil outside. And all of a sudden, the plants started to grow. Lettuce are quite resilient. It was quite funny. They started to grow. They did really well. And then we also almost ended up with too much lettuce. And irrigating them became a problem. At that time, we used to have a conference in Nairobi called HOTEC at KICC. My brother is a great innovator and also interested, like somebody else said, he's a student of life. My brother's a great student of life. And we went to HOTEC and came across drip irrigation. And then I thought, what if we bring some of that drip irrigation back and put it on our lettuce plants? Maybe we can at least water them more cost effectively. Incidentally, this was 1996 and Kenya was going through a massive drought. We were lucky that we had borehole water, but we still had to conserve. So we put the lettuce under drip irrigation. And sure enough, they suddenly grew. Great. And we thought, now what? We couldn't eat them. We thought, take them to market. So here we were suddenly producing this, I would call it value chain towards the production of salad packs, which is where we ended, literally from failing in what we'd started to do, which was hydroponic farming. The long and short of the story is we brought the lettuce to market. I was then 32 years old. I'd never used a computer in my life. We needed to make packaging for these things. I needed a great label. I got my daughter, who was then 7, to draw me a little rabbit. My brother then had a very, very basic computer. He traced the rabbit onto tracing paper, blue tacked it onto the screen, and behind it, we didn't even have Corel Draw or any of these technologies. He drew that little rabbit, got it into a label for me. We put it onto an A4 sheet, printed it black and white, cut it up, cling filmed our lettuce, washed them, put them into bags and put them on the market. And that began a huge, that began the history of, if today you see salad packs all over the Kenyan market, there are probably over 200 or 300 producers with over 200-300 salad packs being sold in the country. That was the beginning. It was an idea from South Africa. It was a failed experiment we came with. But what started to really get me was marketing. How do we get our products out there at an advantage compared to all of the other people on the market? Nobody was packaging. And we know our usual, our culture in Kenya is anything that's imported, we generally think is better than something that's locally produced. Our packaging was so novel that people thought it was an imported product. People used to ask us. It's crazy. And it is a mentality we do have to change. But later, we started growing other products as well. And we created a brand. The brand then was Green Jeans, Genes. And it was a little rabbit and a little pair of jeans. The brand was Green Jeans. This was 1997. And we started growing other products. We started growing tomatoes. And my younger brother then, who was very interested in agriculture, he took over the tomato growing production. High inputs, lots of fertilizers, lots of pests, lots of pesticide. But we didn't know the dangers of these things. We started growing the tomatoes, packaging them with our little label, 6 in a pack, and bringing them into all of the retail stores in the mainstream markets. It's funny, when we had an overproduction of crop and we had to bring in crates of produce just to move it. The consumers refused to buy it. They refused to believe that the people who owned the stores were telling them these are from the same place. These are Green Genes tomatoes. They refused to buy them. We had to take them back and package them. The power of the brand was actually quite amazing. And then one day, standing in the field, spraying tomatoes, spraying the pests, my mother was caught downwind of the drift of spray and became very, very ill. And it made me step back and think, what are we doing? I'm farming. I felt like I was being a farmer and successful at that. I had a brand, I had a product, we were marketing, we were taking things to consumers, but we were poisoning our own family. My 2 children, I thought, my goodness, we're all eating these things. How toxic are they? And I started looking into different ways of being able to produce crops and other products safely. And it pitted me into the organic arena. At that point in time, it was a very small movement in this country, largely spearheaded by the fact that in the 80s, the World Bank told us to cut back our expenditure, government expenditure, and the extension services were cut back. NGOs came in and started filling this space with kitchen garden organic production, trying to create self-sustainability at the small farmer level. And that's where the organic movement started. So there were many producers and a few organizations. And I started looking at that and started learning how to develop, how to grow my crops organically. One consumer actually came up to us, stopped our vehicle. We also had branded vehicles taking our salads and things around Nairobi. Stopped the vehicle and said, can I come to your farm? Can I come and see? Can I actually come and see that what you're producing is toxin-free? So I said, sure. So she came to my farm with her husband and her children. She walked around and then she came up to me and she said, will you deliver a box of vegetables to our home? You're only producing 1 or 2 things into the store, but you've got so many things on the farm. And I thought, wow, we've got, at this point in time, we had 3.6 hectares of lettuce and some herbs. And I thought, you know, what can she see that I can't see that she wants a box of lettuce delivered to her home? She said, you've got an avocado tree over there, you've got a guava tree over there, I can see lemongrass in the corner. And she pointed out all of these things that were almost invisible to me. And then I said to her, look, delivering 1 basket to your house is not very cost effective. And she said, I'll call you in a week. And a week later, she had 14 customers. That was 14 people who were prepared to buy a basket of vegetables. At that point, it was a lot of money for 1,000 shillings. But get this, they wanted to guarantee that I was going to produce it for them. So they promised me they would pay me for 10 baskets up front. Suddenly, I had an immense cash flow that I'd never even thought about. So we started doing it. We started producing, and I suddenly realized, actually, we don't even have enough products. We rapidly started running out of products. So I started looking at the farmers around, and we'd actually done this. We moved to a farm from Karen, now we'd moved to Tigoni. Started looking at smallholder farmers and trying to educate them and bring them in as a supply line for our organic range. We'd now changed the name from Green Genes. It was only at that point in time I realized that's a really bad name because genes implies genetically modified. So I thought, wow, we are trying to do the right thing with the wrong name. So we became Green Dreams and Green Dreams Limited. And then basically started working with the supply chain of farmers. And my experience on organic then had other people tapping into my know-how. The organization BioVision came to me. A gentleman called Peter Baumgartner came up to me and said, will I help with farmers' questions? They're planning on developing an organic farmers magazine, a magazine called The Organic Farmer. And I thought it was brilliant. My sister, you may all have heard of, famous Paula Kahumbu, a friend of hers, when she found out what I was doing, got me a subscription to a magazine, actually a newspaper in the States, in California, which is one of the biggest states of organic production, called Acres, the Acres magazine, Acres USA. And this was like my Bible of information. There was nothing available in Kenya. I still have Acres magazine since 2006, and I go through them. Nothing changes in terms of production, etc. But the information, it was like, heaven. So the idea of forming a local magazine was fantastic. So the Organic Farmer was born then. I think it was 2005, and by the 3rd edition, I started answering farmers' questions. And the magazine, 5,000 copies of the magazine were sent into the farming community, into the organic farming community for free every month. The magazine still exists today, and over 22,000 copies go out into the community. Through the magazine, it became, and through my answer question page, the problems that farmers were having began to become very more visible from around the country, not just my small supply chain. And it made me start thinking about people that were not in the organic sphere. In Africa, we call farmers farmers. But what credibility do we actually have to say that, yes, they're farmers? I mean, the reason I ask this is if you look at a farmer, for example, in the States or in Europe, a farmer in Switzerland, as an example, must have a training, government training, must have certificates, and will be subsidized and supported by the government. The government want to know if you're going to become a food producer, you're going to do it in such a way that you look after our environment, our people, our health, etc. And we'll help you to do that. In Africa, many of our farmers are people who by default have ended up on the land, are producing for their own consumption and then taking the little more they have to market. And like me, many are making grave mistakes with the use of toxins and things that are coming into the food production area merely because they don't know any better. And it's beginning to impact on consumers, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But anyway, I started thinking about how we can get more information out to farmers. As my business started to grow, I started also to take more products, and as I trained farmers, take products into, I tried to get organic mainstream into the big supermarkets here. And we were the first to launch our organic range in Nakumat in December, and by March, we had no products, no organic products left in the field. And of course, Nakumat weren't happy because the shelf space was empty. And they wanted to put other things in a branded organic shelf space, and I was like, no, 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 just leave it empty. But that's not how supermarkets work. So I was doing a lot of tripping and a lot of learning. A supermarket really does not want 1 square foot of space left empty. We retracted from our sales point in Nakumat, and I decided a better thing to do would be to open a shop. So in 2006, I opened up the first organic shop in the Gigiri area, which was where most of the consumers consuming organic were. At that point in time, it was not very well known, and it was mainly an expatriate community. And we were trying really hard to push organic into our mainstream markets and to try and educate farmers on the benefits of also purchasing organic in their home markets. When we had the shop, we had leverage of a much bigger brand, the organic shop, and I went back to the supermarkets as supply started increasing from producers and asked to have a shop-in-shop concept, which is where we ended up now in not only Nakumat, but in Chandarana, Nakumat, Uchumi, etc. And our shop-in-shop was, we supplied the space. We had to man it. We put in our own salespeople, and we were paid by what came out sales from the tills. It was a very, very expensive process, as you can imagine. We had one central shop, the little shop, where all the farmers came in, brought their products, and then we would do the packaging and send it out to the other outlets. We also put in a quality assurance system, a certification system, so that we were guaranteed that the producers knew what they were producing and the consumers knew what they were getting. But as I said, very, very expensive. And as Nairobi's congested traffic started getting bad, we started ending up with problems with our vehicles getting stuck in traffic, trying to get fresh produce around Nairobi city to the different stores. It started to become a nightmare. And then when we had the post-electoral violence, most of the farmers couldn't get their products into the market, and we ended up with very high costs and not enough supply. And that made me think, you know what, at the end of the day, I'm not a dukawala. My bigger passion was now growing towards education, realizing that what was needed here was education. At that time as well, BioVision had gone a step further, and we developed the Infonet website, which was now taking agricultural expertise through research, scientific research, that's been sitting on the shelves in all these institutions across the East African region, and bringing it into a format online so that farmers could access it, as well as extension officers and government agents and anybody else. It's online. And my bigger thing was, farmers can't access this because they don't have the tools, they can't afford to, they don't have the knowledge and the networks, etc. And I kept thinking, how can we get our very rich database of information on the ground to farmers? And then Airtel came into the market. 2010, prices of telephones started plummeting. Prices of credit started dropping. And it started looking like we can actually start putting together education tools for agriculture over mobile phone. one day I was lying in bed, my phone rang, and I rang my daughter. And as I was listening to the sound on the phone of her music that she had, I thought, God, she's a teenager. This is not really exciting music for me. Why can't this be something educational in agriculture? And then I thought, wow, bingo. Here's a great idea. What if we filled ringback tone music with voice on agriculture, how to make compost, where markets are, etc., etc. And I went then to Michael Joseph of Safaricom, and I said, I've got a plan that I want to put onto the mobile space. Michael Joseph was an ardent organic consumer. But the story here is, if you've got a plan, go to the guys at the top, because the guys at the bottom are not going to get you to the top, because they may want to take leverage on your ideas and on what you have. Have the audacity, just keep going to the top. In another instance, in 2006, during the tsunami relief, do any of you remember? It was a long time ago, but the Kenya Tsunami Relief Fund. 0721 100,000 raising money on mobile phone for the tsunami. So, yeah. But that was a concept that I'd also gone to Michael Joseph with an idea. I said, can we use your network to have everyone around this country pull in money to send to the tsunami fund? At that point in time, there was nothing like it. There was no Sambaza, there was no M-Pesa, there was no money movement on phone, but we did it. We raised just under, I think it was between 800,000 shillings, and sent 2 checks off, one to Banda Aceh through the Red Cross went up to Somalia, and it was Oxfam took money to Banda Aceh. But the beauty of the mobile phone for me was it was more of a connecting tool than just a tool for using. So I went to him again with this idea, and I said, look, why don't we put, and I imagined a room like this with walls full of telephones and SIM cards, and I had no idea. I know nothing about technology. I know a little bit more now, but I knew nothing then. And he said, well, it sounds like a good idea. Let's, see what we can do. And I didn't get very far with seeing what we could do, because I still didn't get anything to do with the technology. In 2010, I was also, yes, this is how I met Eric Hersman from the iHub. I was nominated a TED Fellow for some work I was doing in Kibera, not using hydroponic farming, but doing the same thing, changing garbage sites into little agricultural plots. And I met Eric Hersman and John Gossier at the TED conference in Oxford. And I said to him, Eric, this is what I want to do. How do I do it? And he says, you can do this, you can do that. And he didn't really understand where I was coming from either, and nobody did. And it frustrated me and frustrated me. When I came back to Nairobi about 2 weeks later, I walked into this room, and I walked up to Eric, and I said, Eric, you need to help me. What is it I don't know? How can I get what I need onto the telephone? And he said, you need a developer. So I said, what do developers do? I mean, what is a developer? And that began the process of me building then what I wanted was a massive database of IVR information, agricultural information, that would sit on the mobile phone that farmers could access cost effectively across the country. And it was while sitting in the room in the corner over there that Eric came by and said, you should enter the Apps for Africa competition. Enter this thing in the Apps for Africa competition. I said, what is that? He says, it's a hackathon. I said, what is a hackathon? So he said, you have 24 hours to spin an idea and turn it. I said, Eric, I know nothing about technology. This is going to take 5 years to get this product up and running. You want me to do something in 24 hours? This is impossible. Something I didn't tell you about my background, I'm very, very competitive. I've done competition. I've been a swimmer since I was very young. I competed for Kenya. I'm very, very competitive. When I walked out of this room with the developer who was helping me then, Charles Mithika, we walked downstairs into the restaurant, grabbed a Coke, and I said, tell me about a hackathon. What is it? So he started telling me. So I said, well, maybe just in the area of livestock, we can pick out one small component, like the cow gestation calendar, and put that onto the mobile phone within that time. So he said, what is a cow calendar? So I explained to him what the cow calendar was. So we sat down and started putting it together, and I came up onto the board the minute we came in, and I wrote on the board there, iCow. Remember, there used to be 2, boards up here? Whiteboards. And I wrote iCow, and we entered the competition, just like that. And we won the competition. And that's how iCow was born, basically. So there's a long history of experience in agriculture, right up to actually developing the app that won the competition, and then began the really, 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 really hard work. The competition, we had a concept. We had, and I'll just tell you this briefly before we go into the video of iCow. I believed, and I wanted to have this app in IVR in many different languages. So I put the word out for somebody to come and join me, to join my company, and to come in to do Kikuyu and Swahili voiceovers of content that I had out. So this young girl, I think her name was Elizabeth, came. The first time she ever met me, she met me here, and the power went out. And we were recording off a headset, a Apple headset onto my computer. So I thought, right, we need to record these in different languages. I said, hi, here's your script, let's go downstairs. And she was like, okay. We went downstairs and we got in the car in the basement and closed the doors. And I thought, having my experience in music is if you want best recording, you need like a studio environment. You need to close out all the sounds. And I thought, car would be good. It's got cushioning, it'll take away echo effect, etc. So here is this poor girl, first day on the job, sitting with a computer on her lap with this crazy boss in the garage basement, and it's dark, with a torch shining on a piece of paper, and I'm telling her to read these things in Swahili, and then again in Kikuyu, and we're trying to record it. And then just as she started, the generators came on. Exactly, and I thought, okay, wait. So we got out, and I thought, okay, now there was power at least. I thought maybe the lift will give us the same environment. Your lifts have got a little fan, or had a little fan at the top. We had too much sound. So you know where I'm going with this. New employee, first day on the job, we're in the toilets. We've closed the door, and we're standing in the toilets with a computer, and she's got the script, and we're reading. She was great, though. That, for me, was, we got super sound. We had to keep telling people, don't come in, okay, wait, somebody's coming in, they're flushing. Okay, wait, okay, start again, start, 5, 4, 3, go. Later on, when we finally had office space and we were doing the same recording, you'll never believe this. I've had the best space for recording was inside a cold room with 2 slabs of pig, 10 wheels of cheese, standing in there in this cold space, reading, but we got the best sound. So that's, we never did go on to do IVR. We changed it later. And another story in there is whatever product you have, be prepared to iterate a lot and a lot. We're still iterating. Some of you have seen the video clip that was on Al Jazeera. How many have seen it? Okay, I'm so glad that most of you haven't. For those that have, you can go get a coffee or get something to eat. For those that haven't, I thought it really does give you a great rundown of iCow, what iCow is doing on the market now. So we'll play that now.
Trees with exceptional nutritional properties are also on the agenda. The baobab was the very first plant specimen to be sequenced here at the World Agroforestry Center.
Baobab is highly nutritious. It has twice as much calcium than milk. Did you know that?
No.
By the way, did you know that? Isn't that amazing? And we don't give our children baobab milkshake. Oh. It has almost 4 times the amount of potassium compared to bananas, 15 times antioxidants compared to oranges. The leaves are highly nutritious, more than spinach. So what we're trying to do through domestication is to shorten that life cycle so that the trees start fruiting within 5 years. And they're not only in the forests, we start putting them in farmers' fields so that they can generate some income from selling to the private sector. Why can't our crops be like cocoa, which is all over the world? We are hoping that the national governments will invest in the breeders to capture this information and put it into their breeding programs. Let's rise to the challenge.
Kenya is a country with a rich agricultural heritage and a history of traditional farming. But now, mobile phone technology is set to transform Kenyan cattle farming. Paul Guchu is a Kenyan dairy farmer. For some time, he has been struggling to make his small dairy herd profitable. Then he discovered iCow. It's a mobile app that provides him with information and agricultural tips.
I have a few messages from iCow. That is an update. So they are saying she may be pregnant, be ready to do a PD test in 4 days' time. They'll tell you how to increase milk production. They'll tell you how many kgs to feed it. Though at times it's challenging, it works. It works for me.
iCow was invented by agri-tech entrepreneur Sue Kahumbu. Sue runs the iCow office from her organic farm just outside Nairobi.
This here is a contraption. The animals would have shade, but the big birds couldn't get little ones. So they grow up in here basically, and then they'll come out when they're a little bit bigger. We started as the first mobile app in the agricultural space, I think actually on the continent.
To get started, farmers register on iCow using a free SMS number.
If you want to register for our services, you dial *285, go to number 2. You will receive 3 SMS a week at 3 shillings each. Select one to choose your tips.
Once they're registered, they're able to browse a menu offering a range of options.
Basically, that's the way it works. So you go in and all of the information comes to you based on your query as an SMS.
It's a simple phone,
yes.
Simple technology, but it's a very sophisticated information network and distribution network.
Yep.
If a farmer is unable to find the advice he needs on the phone menu, the iCow office will put him in touch with someone who can help.
My name is Eve. I'm calling you from iCow.
The iCow team also uses the database of farmers to stay in touch and to find out how the service can be added to or improved.
I see that you have been using our services on Mashauri cow. How much milk did you used to get before? From the 3 cows, now you're getting 40 liters from 30 liters. So each cow gives you how many liters?
On our database of farmers, we have just over 600,000 who have touched base with the platform, and at any one point in time, about 150,000 that are using different products on the platform. The farmers who signed on will get 3 SMSs a week, so 12 SMSs a month, and slowly build up. We have got farmers who are now 600 messages later, only about cows. I mean, they're expert farmers. And the responses we're getting are absolutely amazing. Everything from increased milk yields to reduced mortality in poultry to, it's just amazing.
And iCow is growing. The platform will soon be expanding to include a project called Smart Farm Tips, a service designed to supply extensive information on a variety of livestock.
For you to be able to learn more about ticks, we have a feature called Smart Farm Tips, where you don't have to register. You can just go dial *285#, select number 3 for Smart Tips, and then under Smart Tips, check livestock, and from livestock, you can now check diseases and pests.
It's almost like a wiki for agriculture. Farmers can go on and search the menu, and when they search livestock, they'll get a menu that will drop down, giving them all the different animals within that space. Cows, poultry, goats, sheep, pigs, rabbits, camels, fish, even donkeys.
And it's so great that this doesn't rely on an internet network, you know?
No internet.
It seems really simple as well, very easy to use, very self-explanatory.
In the palm of a farmer's hand, he has access to literally everything that he needs to get it right. So hopefully taking the biggest risk out of farming and enabling farmers actually become more productive and increase incomes. So that generally is what iCow does. If you saw from the drop-down menu on Smart Tips, we now cover crops. And we do more than just give farmers information and knowledge. We also connect them to the other stakeholders in the agricultural ecosystem. On the list you'll see there's crops, livestock, there's finance, where the different financial institutions who want to reach out to farmers are also made visible to farmers on their phones, and a variety of other things. I always say that one of the big mistakes we make in agriculture is we try to assume that if we give the farmer what we think he needs, money, inputs, be it seeds, fertilizers, etc., he's going to be successful. But at the end of the day, you can give the smartest farmer bad seed, bad inputs, and he will produce. And you can give the most illiterate farmer the best seed, access to money, the best inputs, and he won't be able to produce. A farmer starts with knowledge, and we feel that that's why we've got retention of customers, farmers that are actually seeing by building up their own knowledge, the same way all of you go to classes to learn more and you have that thirst for knowledge. If you can imagine in the farming communities, most people don't have access to books or any other source of information. Being able to build up on your own acumen in any way and see that tangible result into shillings in your pocket, money to buy solar, pay school fees, etc., etc. It's not really rocket science. I just want to touch on a couple of things. The challenges, it's not been an easy journey all the way. Nothing ever is in the entrepreneurial space. We were lucky in the beginning. When we started developing the prototype, it cost money. And we had the Indigo Trust Fund in the UK, who gave us an initial grant of $5,000, and that's how we started. With that money, actually, we did the first thing that everybody should do in this space, is we went and secured our IP, got a copyright on the product. And then we started developing it and testing it on the market. And in no time at all, $5,000 was over. But they liked what we were doing. They liked the advances we were making, and they gave us another grant. They gave us a grant through I think it was up to more than a year period of eventually up to, was it dollars or was it pounds? It was pounds. It was £5,000. Up to just over £100,000 to get the product to a point where now we had a viable product with consumers that were using it, users that were using it, and that were paying for it. And with that, then we were able to attract many other partners and strategic partners. So our biggest challenges were, how do we market this product to the farmers? We went to farmers' field days, we had people on the ground, very, very expensive processes. And we thought we could do it all ourselves. And then we started to, and at the time, I was very, I'm very pro always the benefits for the farmer. My full concentration is on, if it's not good for the farmer, we're not going to do it. It must benefit the farmer first. And when it came to the networks to work with, I thought Airtel, Orange, and Safaricom were the greatest choice, because it meant farmers didn't have to change their SIM cards. So we tried to be agnostic, and then found that in being so, we weren't getting a lot of support from the MNOs in terms of marketing the product, because they didn't want to market for each other. So eventually, we made a strategic decision to find a strategic partner, and it was Safaricom in that space. And our partnership involved Safaricom taking over what was then one of the biggest challenges, the most expensive challenges for us, marketing. And it left us to do content, quality assurance, development of the product, and the other things, but not marketing, which was huge. So that was great. Some of the problems we've actually had in that space as well have been, when you're working with a very, very big, very strong partner, trying to get attention, it's like, being the little kid in the class. Hey, we want this, we want that. And they've got big things going on with M-Pesa and Mshwari and all these things. And we're like, but we're here, just trying to keep the pressure on so your product doesn't just disappear into something that's not happening. And then for me, one of the challenges was, I don't know if any of you have got products out there, but when Safaricom put in their SDP, the SDP regulations of people having to opt in over SDP, that became challenging again. We had to now very quickly design some sort of middleware between our platform and the SDP, and just a lot of time taken and a space for me that I didn't really understand, expensive time. But we got it right. Not only was it important for us to choose strategic partners in terms of the mobile space, we knew we also needed other partners in terms of finance, and more than finance, and very, very important to the core of any business, organizational business skills. So we partnered with an organization called the Alea Foundation. They're actually equity investors in iCow now. And they help us tremendously when it comes to getting the business side of it right and keeping us focused. Of all the entrepreneurs in this room, If I ask you to put your hands up, one of you that have developed more than 10 things, I'm sure all your hands will go up. We're very unfocused. In fact, I think that we're just grown-ups with ADHD, because there are so many things to be done and so many things we can do, and they pull you in so many directions, yet focus is really key. Now, Elea are Swiss, and the Swiss are very, very focused, as you know, so sometimes sometimes it stresses me to pieces, and then content partners. Very important that we worked with content partners who had very good quality content. So we work with BioVision Foundation there, and tech, support around the tech space, helping us make sure we're making the right decisions. Accenture Switzerland work with us in that area as well. We've got a tech team here. One of the big challenges for me with our tech team here is there are so few people in the tech space. And our junior developer, within a year of being with us, and within a year of applying to go to university in Tallinn in Estonia, he was picked up like this because of what his involvement with iCow. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how do we keep our resources here? How do we keep the people we trained helping us develop the product when the rest of the world is offering them fantastic things like scholarships? Anyway, he still works with us remotely. But they are some of the challenges, trying to keep the core of the product, the technology, working and going, and being able to handle the troubleshooting. I want to talk more generic now about the agriculture and technology. There are lots of... I've just come from a conference in Holland where they pulled in most of the products that are working in the different space of technology agriculture, and there were a list of different things. So animation and video, and I heard that there are 2 people in here who are doing animations. One of the organizations there is doing animation with no voice, so you voice over or subtitle the voices in. Very, very nice, so you can take lessons like composting or, dry milking or whatever it is, and you can actually animate those, put them in. Very useful. We're going to work with their content. If there was locally available content, we'd work with that as well. Radio, internet, TV, mobile phone. Generally, the focus has always been the same. Market prices, information and knowledge, markets, insurance, crops and livestock, and increasingly now microfinance in that space. The drivers for most of these products are in the space are government, entrepreneurs like myself, MNOs, research institutions, input providers, and increasingly now NGOs as well. If we look at just the mobile space, the different models that I've seen that, and in the very early stages, we were actually approached to go into this model, and we didn't. But a lot of it is MNO driven. So MNOs getting in touch with content providers, working with content providers, somebody who's going to do M&E, et cetera, user interface guys who'll make it work on the phone and technology, and then the MNOs trying to push stuff out. The biggest link that's always missing there is the expertise in agriculture, the farmer, the problem. What problem is trying to be solved? There's one thing with having open data and data being there, but it's so important that that data is used to solve a problem, not just for the sake of putting data onto a space and saying, wow, we can do this. Because then you've got to go out and look for the problem that you're fixing with that. It's much easier to have the problem as a starting point. And the starting point for me, when we look at agriculture, is questionable. Is it the farmer or is it the consumer? Because agriculture ultimately results in the production of food. And on the one hand, as a consumer, if the markets worked right, consumers would have a choice, choose certain products, that would act as the demand trigger for producers to produce. But we're not in that environment here. We generally eat what we see, choose what we see on the shelves, and farmers are generally pushed to produce by input providers and sometimes markets, but a lot of the time it's grow this because it'll do that, do this because it'll do that. And what we're beginning to see is that on the other end of the spectrum, consumers globally are beginning to be very affected from a health perspective. I was picking up some data today on some of the diseases. Diabetes, Mexico. Mexico is the country, the mother country of maize. Okay? The product maize today is being used for so many other things. Did you know there's maize in your Coca-Cola? I mean, maize has been grown in such vast quantities and stripped down to the sugar component of it, and it's even used in glues. It's in everything. It's in your toothpaste, it's in your yogurt, it's everywhere. 50% of the population today of Mexico suffer from diabetes. That's 50% of an entire country. The statistics for Kenya are growing. And the scary thing about diabetes in Kenya is it's growing in the young people. The youth are beginning to be affected. We're going to end up with a very ill population if we don't look at where these problems are coming from and try and make those connections between food and the production of food and illness. 1.8 million young Kenyans apparently are suffering from diabetes. Obesity, get this figure, 69.3% of women, in which country do you think 69.3% of women suffer from obesity? Where? Nope. Right on, South Africa. Can you imagine 69.3% suffer from obesity? And obesity is being linked to food all over the world. The populations that are suffering the most from obesity, within those populations, it is the minority. It is the people who can't afford to buy good quality food, but can afford to buy poor quality food. In the States, in some areas, water is more expensive than Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is saturated with corn syrup. So, coming back to my passion for agriculture, my passion for healthy food, I'm beginning to think, and what I would love to do and encourage and even support and work with, I'm beginning to think that we can develop apps for the farmers, but we need to develop apps for the consumers. We've got consumers with increasing illnesses in this country, and I'll give you a few more. Cancer. Hands up if you know anyone with cancer in Kenya. Hands up if you knew anyone 10 years ago with cancer in Kenya. But you see the difference? And if we look at the data and look at the statistics, an ailment that I suffer from myself, I wasn't actually going I thought I wasn't going to be able to make it here today. And you notice my voice is very hoarse. I suffer from gluten intolerance. Now, hands up anybody who knows anybody who suffers from acidity. Okay? Ulcers and acidity. Okay? It's nearly 80% of this room. I suffered from an ailment that had me hospitalized 4 times in 4 years. I had endoscopies to find out if I had stomach cancer. I had colonoscopies to find out if I had cancer in my colon. And the doctors couldn't come up with anything. Each time I was hospitalized, there was no result. There was no known cause to the problem that I had, but I kept getting this problem. And what I started to do was to cut out certain things in my diet that exacerbated this problem, that was inflaming my digestive tract. It turns out, through a lot of self-diagnosis and internet research and talking to other people who've got the same problem that doctors cannot diagnose because there is no medical diagnosis for it, that I'm intolerant to gluten. And what is gluten? Gluten is a protein that is found in wheat, rye, barley, and a few other grains. Gluten, the reaction, if you're intolerant to gluten, is you get an inflammation of your intestines. It can become very difficult to eat things. I mean, a very bad version of gluten is celiac intolerance that children will have who cannot eat any of these things. But why? Why is there a sudden increase, an unexplained exponential growth in gluten intolerance across the globe today? And if you map it, and if anyone dares to go and get the data from our medical institutions on those 3 things, acidity, ulcers, etc., you map that with the amount of drugs that are being sold that are antacids, Galveston, Maalox, Nexium. Nexium is an end-of-line drug used in the States. You must get it by subscription. It is sold Kenya over the counter. It's one of the highest selling drugs in the country. Why? So many people are suffering from gluten intolerance in this country. And if we start drilling down and trying to figure out why, we're going to find it in food. It's food production. So where does our wheat come from in this country? There's a certain amount that we produce. There is a lot that we import. Is that imported wheat being checked? Or is it coming in with contaminants? Go to the scale of GMO. GMO maize, GMO wheat also brings in contaminants that once they affect your digestive tract, you're in trouble. So there are lots of things going on in the medical space, in the human health space that are in front of our eyes that are directly related to agriculture. And I challenge all the young tech people here to look at this as an area of direction to go. Develop things for consumers. Consumers who need to know what are the things. When you look at a label of something you buy in a supermarket, what is all that jargon? It's like Latin. There are ingredients in there that are not even food ingredients. What are they? What do they do to our systems? Where we have such a high population suffering from diabetes, undiagnosed because you cannot diagnose it, gluten intolerance, cancers. What solutions are we developing from that end? Because this will then create a push backwards from production. The the Monsanto produce a product called Roundup, and Roundup is used generally. How many of you know about Roundup? Okay, so it's a herbicide. It's generally used, it's sprayed on the ground, and it stops the plants from being able to photosynthesize, and they die, and it's used as a weed killer for certain crops. Roundup ready crops will not be affected by this weed killer, but everything else will. We don't have, by law, we're not allowed to have genetically modified crops in this country, but farmers still use Roundup, which is not genetically modified, but it is a product that kills the weeds. Farmers use it all the time, but many don't use it for the reason it is supposed to be used. Imagine this. You're a farmer. You've got a product in your hands that can literally dry in the matter of days all the weeds on your garden, bring them down to dry, completely dry, okay? And you've got a field of maize that's close to harvest. And you've got to bring your maize down to 13.5 degrees humidity in order to get it to the silos. And the rains are coming. Climate change is putting us in that position where the rains are fickle, and if your crop is left in the field and it's not dried, you're in trouble. What would you do? What farmers are doing is they're resorting to using Roundup to dry their maize in the field. They're using Roundup to dry their beans. 1 + 1 = 2. It's very understandable. Most countries have banned Roundup from being used. We haven't. And it's coming into our food chain. Glyphosate, which is the main ingredient, is now being found in amniotic fluid, breast milk, urine. It's everywhere, and it's dangerous. Originally, it was said to break down within 24 hours with the sun, but it isn't. So a lot of research, and people are coming together now. The medical world is coming together to start saying, in Kenya, look, we're getting these high increases in these diseases. Where is it coming from? What's happening? But I challenge you all, and I will help you all, put you in direction with people, to develop tools that help consumers look after their health. I think that's where I wanted to end this, just very quickly on building apps. Start with the problem. Define the problem and really dig deep. Our customer care digs deep every single day. We're defining what else we can give farmers that is useful to them. What else do they need? Subject matter expertise. You must know your subject matter. And if you don't, get a partner who does. Find an institution or a friend, a colleague, somebody who does to guide you. Know your users inside out. And hack a working prototype together as soon as possible. I've heard so many people who are saying, yeah, I've got this great idea. Guess what? Ideas are many. We all have ideas. But a working prototype is where somebody will stop dead in their tracks, whether it's a financial supporter, somebody who's going to give you a grant, or a financial supporter, or other team players, or even strategic partners. They will stop dead in their tracks if you wait until that day where you've got something not only that works, but that has users using it, because you're showing that it has a market. Not a dream I put together and it works, but a dream I put together because I knew the problem and these guys are already using it and this is what they're saying. Yeah? And get ready to iterate over and over. And throughout that process, try really hard to use grant money, to get grant money. I've always said it's such a risky business when you start giving equity very early on in development of a product. You'll find that by the time you've got to a product that works, which guaranteeing you it'll be 2 to 3 years later, you're going to end up as a minority shareholder. So look for grant equity. And this ecosystem and the people here in finance should actually look at that area very closely. There are not a lot of people in this country, or not a lot of organizations that are willing to put in grant equity. It's worth the risk in the end if the product gets to market. Think sustainability. Without a doubt. Easy, that's an easy one. Build a team, define your weaknesses early and fill those gaps, and get your partnership ecosystem lined up. Most importantly, always stay very true to your ethos and to your users. It's very easy, even with us. People come to us and say, can we use your product to market this product to your farmers? And I'm saying, well, if I personally don't think it's very safe in the farming community, I don't want to market it to them. Stick true to your ethos because your users are with you, because they're getting value for what you believe in. It's very easy when you're bootstrapping to have big industry come in and push you to do things that you didn't actually intend to do in the beginning. So stick to your ethos and focus, 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 focus. I'm always told, and it's a big thing, people say, you know, get all your ducks in the row. And I'm like, the ducks will never be in a row. There's always a duck out there, and then you pull it in and another duck goes out there, and you'll never get your ducks in a row. Get as many of them in there as you can. Give some freedom to fly away and never come back, but, you know, stay in the front, that's all. And then finally, be passionate and enjoy the ride. Thank you.
Tuseme asante sana. Yeah? Makofi kidogo. I think I've learned more than I expected because some of these things we say here and there, but you've covered very broad areas that we've been discussing here. I'm sure there are so many questions. I think you've heard here that it is not just food security. We're looking at the quality of food. One thing that I've gotten from here is that those shelves in supermarkets, they are still empty, and there are still people looking for jobs, and there is still some land somewhere, and even up to a quarter an acre, you said, half an acre, you can do hydroponic. I think there are too many questions to be asked. We can start from anywhere. Oh, asante sana. Oh, you are racing or you are?
Thanks, Sue, for the great.
Your full name and everything, so that everybody benefits. I know John.
My name is John Kieti. I work downstairs at the M-Lab. I'm also a researcher in the area of agriculture and technology, M4D. Last year, at the end of last year, you wrote a report, I think it was on the Indigo Trust site. That was one of the key points that you had, one of the lessons for last year was that don't rush to scale. And considering right now, you just mentioned about your numbers around 600,000 farmers, 150,000 active, and I think a couple of years ago, the numbers were much lower. What changed, and what is the role of Safaricom?
Thank you for that question, John. What changed was our strategic partnership with Safaricom. So up until we joined them, our numbers were very low. I mean, our numbers were, I think we had 46,000 in our database and only a couple of thousand who were actively using the product. What changed was access to their marketing machinery. So we've done, in the beginning, we did a lot of above-the-line marketing. We did billboards, radio, TV. We did a whole bunch of different things. And then later on, we started to do, and one of the things that happened, why I say don't try to scale too quickly, is our platform crashed. The traffic that came on our platform simply crashed. When we sorted things out, we then started doing below-the-line marketing, tag SMSing, and then we ended up with the same problem. The traffic was too much and the platform crashed. We're currently in a position where we're migrating onto a much more robust platform. And we've toned down our marketing over the last 4 months and probably will continue up until February, until we've migrated. That way we know. I mean, we were getting 8,000 users coming onto the platform a day, trying to come on. We just didn't have the capacity to deal with it. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Joroge. Thanks very much for your presentation. It was really enriching. I do have a question though. Are you able to tell out of, let's say, new converts into agribusiness from your influence at iCow? And if you have, or if you can, what's the kind of success rate that they have? And two, are you at liberty to discuss the partnership you have with Safaricom?
I'll answer your question 2 first. I won't tell you the exact details, but we have a revenue share with them. Yeah. So I suppose everyone, that's kind of like confidential. But with regards to users converting into agribusiness, the latest 2 posts on our website talk about 2 poultry farmers who started out. One of them actually is a computer programmer who didn't find a job in Nairobi, went back to his farm, and with his mum. His name is Aaron. His mum gave him a loan of 20,000 shillings, and he invested in kienyeji chickens to begin with, sold those, got 30,000 shillings, and he then got a loan from Equity Bank, and has now started a production of, I think he's doing, if I'm not mistaken, between the 2, 150 or 300 birds per batch. And he's done so far about 8 batches of birds. Sells them into the local market, into the hotels, into whatever. What is different and where our poultry products help him is, one, he can put his batches of chickens onto the system, and we send him reminders of when he needs to do the various vaccinations so he doesn't get it wrong. The biggest risk for poultry farmers in Kenya is disease, losing the animals to disease and not giving them the right vaccinations. So when you're doing many batches of chickens, you can tend to forget who's had what, who needs what. So that helps in that area. And then, of course, hygiene. Hygiene is very important. The other farmer is a farmer called John, and he was an unsuccessful poultry farmer. Again, went onto our platform, started getting information on proper poultry production, best practices, and has done very successful as well. I think he's on his 8th batch of chickens since he started, and he started last year in November. Dairy producers have told us, so we don't actively ask users to give us back information that we can track it as such, but our customer care is continually doing surveys on farmers and finding out what their increases are and what they're doing. In terms of, here's a good one. One of our users actually is the mother of Aaron. She heard about iCow through her brother-in-law. She got a flyer, she brought her son into it, and she sends the SMSs on to a friend who's also following iCow. So there's a lot of bleed in the system, which is fine, as long as it's resulting in impact. We basically judge the success of iCow based on the fact that we have retention of users who are continuing to build up their acumen, and the fact that they pay. How it transpires into actual agribusinesses in the ground, we would need to really dig deep and do a big survey or research, or it's not our core competence. Let other organizations come in and do it. Yeah, thank you.
One thing that I don't know how many of you read the newspapers last week, President Museveni complaining that Kenyans have taken all his eggs There are no eggs in the market, so they are importing most from South Africa and Uganda. I don't know whether anybody read it. It was about chicken, whatnot, sugar, eggs. Nobody read. Yeah, link that to the market and see what we could do.
So that there is an underproduction of eggs in Kenya?
Yeah. Okay, uko nyuma.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm called Charles. I'm Internet Society Kenya. I work for the Kenya Forest Research Institute. I met you 4 years ago. If you can remember, Kefri.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. At that time, you were asking whether you can scale the project to the whole country. You said you didn't have the capacity, because technical capacity. Now that you have a platform, Safaricom, to advertise all over, have developed the internal capacity to actually support the whole region. What about going regional?
Next question, so that she can answer two at the same time.
Okay.
Scaling up.
My name's Dimba Wycliffe. I'm a member of ISOC and equally a passionate entrepreneur. So I was really pleased that your passion for entrepreneurship and research into agriculture, which you're very passionate about, came out through very strongly. While out in the UK and visiting several of the supermarkets there, call it Tesco, Asda, or Sainsbury, I would rush to the counter probably and pick up, a bag of potatoes, very big ones. And I would rush to the counter and pay for it and take off. But I noticed the residents in the UK, most of them would end up looking at the labels on those potatoes. And that got me curious. So when I went to look at the price, I saw the organic potatoes were more expensive than the GMOs. And you talked about a lot of our diseases being linked to this, GMOs, genetically modified organisms, be it maize, be it any agricultural products that are out there. You talked about the consumer being able to...
Ask the question.
Yeah. I'm just trying to link it to that, yeah. You talked about the consumer, starting from the, not just the producer and also the consumer. Have you probably taken to the, the electronic and the print media to try and get the consumers who would be able to probably increase the demand, which obviously will be able to drive the supply, so that people can be able to, it will be a win-win situation for the supply and for the demand.
Scalability and
shall I answer those now? Okay.
Yeah.
So
first one was on scale.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, Charles, we are, by February, we will be in a position where we can scale across the country. We are actually across the country. We have farmers in every county on the iCow platform. But to actually go in and market now and really pick up the scale that we want, February is the timeline we're looking at. In terms of regionally, I always say, if we're not going to get it 100% right in Kenya, there's no point in us even thinking regionally. This is my country, and this is where I want us to have iCow have the biggest impact. We have had requests up until today from Uganda, yesterday Nicaragua and Guatemala. Within the last few years, not only the developing countries, but even developed countries who want certain aspects of what iCow does. So we will be looking at regional expansion, but it will come at the appropriate time. I'm going to frame your question as, what have we done as the organic or sustainable sector to create awareness to consumers about the issues with health and the issues with safe production on the market? And I agree with you that we've really not done enough, okay? Two things I'd say. One is you have to choose which battles you're going to fight. That whole space of going in there and trying to prove certain things, big money will come in and try and swamp you. Big money will come and try and those stories will not be heard. We've tried very hard as the organic sector, the Kenya Organic Agricultural Network, to create consumer awareness. I don't even like to use the word organic. I prefer to use the word sustainable agroecological production. Organic in the Western world has this stigma of being for the rich, for the elite, and it must be more expensive. It's only because they've been producing conventionally for so long that in order to bring land back to being organic and look after your soils and bring back the nutrient to your soils, takes a long time to heal already damaged soils. In Africa, we do have poor soils, but we do have access to cheaper labor in comparison and more natural inputs that we can use to build our soils. What we lack is the knowledge to do so. So theoretically, not theoretically, our production should be cheaper. The majority of farmers in Kenya don't use chemicals. It doesn't mean that they're producing safe and sustainably, and not even sustainably in terms of from the environment, because many will mine the soils due to lack of knowledge. Continue to grow one crop, mine the soils of those nutrients, continue to grow another, or in some cases, battle with pests and disease at the same time. So what I'm beginning to see, there has been a very strong push in some countries, you've mentioned the UK, for consumer rights, pushing and saying, we want safe food. In order to prove it, going through certification, those high costs, et cetera, the organic food has come at a premium price. In Denmark, on the other hand, the government of Denmark has said everyone should have access to safe food. So the Danish government subsidized the organic producers who may have a higher cost of production, and the food is the same price as conventional food. You get to choose what you want to buy, which is great. In Africa, we don't even know which food is coming onto our markets toxin-free. The Kenyan Organic Network did tests on food in the Nairobi stores, in Nakumatt, some kiosks, and I think also in Uchumi, 2006, on a variety of different products, and they tested them for what they call MRLs, a maximum residue level of pesticides allowed in any crops for being exported. Those are some, at least, measures we could measure and say, okay, Kenya is known to be a great exporting country, and we'll come to how we nearly failed just the other day. Our maximum residue levels on products that were hitting the urban areas were between 300 and 1,000% above levels allowed into the EU. Our food is toxic. There's a lot of it that's toxic. And it generally is because people don't know. The push is for agro-input providers to say, you need this, you need this, you need that. We know farmers who are spraying things to bring them to the market, thinking that that spray is going to give the product a longer shelf life. It is still toxic at the point of consumption. Our export market, up until last month, came close to collapse for MRLs. Where did all that product end up? All those months of product not hitting the European markets is here in this country being consumed by us. So I think it's not really about the farmers and trying to push the farmers to know, because you're against some very great odds. There is a lot of education needed, yes, but I think that once consumers start to realize, and sadly, unfortunately, I predict 5 years from now, it will be sickness that drives safe production of food in this country. And we need to try and say, what can we do to prevent getting there?
How many of you know ISO certification in agricultural sector? And these are for exports. You cannot export food to Europe without giving the full history of the materials you use, the soil type, everything to Europe. But for ourselves, we don't get that information, nobody demands it, nobody knows about it. I think it's about time now to begin to educate the farmers that we can equally do it for the local consumption. And that's what, any question?
And also demand at retail end, that they demand producers come in having produced in certain ways.
Yeah. And also branding. Said if you brand and say I'm toxin free, And if there are toxins, it's much easier to sue than when you unanunua mboga huko kwa market. Any question? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Kenywa. Thank you very much for your talk. If I understand the business model correctly, we're talking about iCow. What's the relationship with that and Green Dreams and the market, the farmers that you are educating in this way? What's the process of access to markets for them? Is that part of, I've understood so far that iCow helps them improve the way they produce. Does it in any way play a role in getting access to markets? Does Green Dreams do that, or do you then arrange for their produce to be bought? How do we handle the access to the markets for the farmers?
Let's get 3 questions. Yes?
Thanks a lot. Okay, mine is a comment and a question. With regards to consumers having access to foods that are safe at the supermarket level, it would require an interplay of many factors, and also, for example, government inspection. I remember from my days when I lived in South Africa, you'd find that when you go to the supermarket, you have a great choice about what you want to buy and where you want to buy. If I want clean, good food, I'll go to Woolworths, and I'll find that most of their food is organic. And the certification and the detail of where the food comes from is clearly labeled. I'll pay slightly more, but I'll get what I want. If I want just conventional food, I'll go to Pick and Pay, which is the equivalent of an Akumat here. And I think because also of a large middle class and affordability, many consumers, Woolworths would actually find it sustainable economically to stock food that is slightly more expensive. And I think here in Kenya, maybe as we grow our middle class, the demand will come. And we also need, for example, Nakuma to really label their food and put a section clearly that this food will be there by then. But even just trying, I myself, in fact, this morning I was just sending a WhatsApp to a friend. I tried to grow broccoli in my uncle's little pumpkin patch, and all my broccolis died except 2. And I realized that they were infested because I didn't want to spray. I wanted to grow organic. And I realized if I see broccoli now that is really, really good and a green, nice head, either it's been heavily sprayed or it's been under so one has to be very careful about what one eats. But it's possible to get it, but it's also possible. It requires a lot of many interplay of people to come on board. My other question is on technology diffusion. What is your tipping point right now, in terms of the number of people in your platform? Would you say that you've reached your tipping point? You're a fast mover in the market, so to speak. Have you surpassed that tipping point, or do you think you're still growing towards it?
Tipping point to what?
In terms of what is your market share of...
Oh, we're not even close.
There isn't.
We're not even close to where we want to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
But I want to just answer that question with regards to broccoli and pests. I'll tell you guys a very funny story. In my days of producing salad, we also ended up producing bulk for the airlines. We went out and reached out into every market, not only the local markets, but Farmers Choice would do the hotels, and we produced for Nairobi Airport Services for the airlines. And there are quality assurance measures that one must follow, the HACCP conditions. And they train all of their suppliers in how to follow HACCP, and they tell you that the reason they do this is the airlines then give that information on to every consumer, and if there is a problem, the traceability comes right back to the product. Well, it just so happens that a caterpillar ended up on a salad on a flight that was going to the coast. And I get a call from the airline saying that they're sending me something. They send me this brown envelope with our next delivery, and inside there's a Petri dish, and there's a caterpillar, a very healthy, alive little caterpillar. And they sent me this message, and they said to me, you know, they want an explanation. How did this caterpillar get into the lettuce? So I said I would be more concerned that it didn't have a passport to go on the plane. You know, and I actually didn't end up getting a very good response from them. But I said one thing: if your food is safe enough for insects to eat it, it's safe enough for you. So where you will get pests on broccoli, and yes, those clean heads of broccoli without any pests, be sure what you're going to eat is pesticide. They're infused with pesticide. There are organic ways of reducing your pests. There are organic ways, and we must ask ourselves, firstly, why do we have pests? One of the biggest reasons you have pests in your crop is because of your soils. The same way human health is affected by what you eat. If you keep getting a flu and you keep getting sick and you're not eating enough vitamin C in the things you're eating, you're prone to pick up those things. Plants give off an aura that attracts certain pests based on their health. And their health is dependent on the soil. In organic production, we don't look at the health of the plant, we look at the health of the soil. If you continually build your soils, the same way a forest is forever building its soils, you don't get a lot of disease on the plants and the floor of a forest. And some pests need to be there, and some pests, you know, are beneficial pests because they eat the eggs of the other pests. And that's why farming is knowledge-based. It's not simply we can go in and say we've got input providers and we've got land and we've got this, and they can say this will happen, spray with this will happen, spray with that. No, you need to know what you're doing. And the day you can actually produce, when I produce, I don't use any pesticides. I read, and before you produce, again, really interesting stuff, if you read your land, you get an idea of your soil quality based on the weeds that are growing there. Most of our weeds are related to crops. If you come in because somebody told you, a greenhouse expert told you to grow tomatoes in a place where your soils will not even, you know, support the growth of tomatoes, you're making a mistake. So it's all about knowledge. If you know your weeds, you know which crops you can start with as you build your soils. Crops that are related, crops that are not heavy feeders. If you start using heavy feeders straight away in poor soils, you will fail. Did that answer your question? Or was there more to that question? I have Kenya's questions here. And was it Kinua who talked about certification? You talked about certification.
I was wondering what was the role of Green Dreams.
Okay, sorry. So I was just on her points about certification, but I'll come back. I'll go to your questions first. The relationship between Green Dreams Tech and iCow. Okay, so Green Dreams was my business that was in development. In markets, producing products and selling markets. I then formed another company, Green Dreams Tech, to separate that from the company now that develops solutions for farmers. iCow is simply one of those solutions. Okay, and you said, do we provide markets? One of the hardest things to do is to provide a market for farmers. There have been a lot of people, when I had my shop, I did just about everything I could to satisfy the farmers and satisfy the consumers. To satisfy the farmers, I had an agronomist working with them on the field, making sure that they were growing the right way. We had a certification system in place. Certification locally, we set up a local certification system with the Kenya Organic Network body. NCERT is a locally available organic certification company, which really reduces the price markedly, but it's still, given the dynamic system in which farmers operate, cyclic, rains, drought, etc., poor quality produce, lack of knowledge, poor soils, it was very hard for farmers to actually pay for the certification, so we did a system where we would deduct a certain amount of their sales and help to pay their certification in installments over the year. As much as we tried that, and as much as we tried to satisfy the markets, the consumers, there's no easy fix. You put yourself into a position where you can be looked upon, if you don't get it right, as being the bad person. You're never able to take up full volumes, and you're never able to supply, because the supply end is changing as well, and the production end is changing. So it's an area I'd never want to get into again, because it's fraught with complications that you can't control. What I have found is if a farmer has knowledge, and his markets are in his area, and he can deliver to those markets good quality at the right price. The bigger problem is most farmers do not know their price of production. Okay? They go into a market and see everyone's doing tomatoes and we're all going to do tomatoes. And generally, that's not because they're copying. It's because the weather and the soils in their area have created, over time, a system where the most adapted products will be produced, which is why you'll get all your tomatoes from a certain area at a certain time. At a much reduced risk. Farmers are not going to mess around and try something new at a high risk. They can't afford to. So where was I going with this? Value addition, teaching farmers about value addition and teaching farmers about the prices. When you bring a product to market, what does it cost you? From the information I have from farmers, the majority, smallholder farmers, not the young and the educated who are coming in and coming in from the point of view of business and doing the math first. The majority have no idea what it cost them. I'll ask you all a question that I asked a group of representatives, 60 representatives from about 2,000 farmers across the country. I'll ask you guys the same question, and I want to see an honest opinion and hands up. Over the last 4 months, I believe most of you have consumed either salt or sugar in your homes, in your diets. Hands up, the people who know how much, in terms of money, of those products they've consumed. Yeah. Not the cost per kilo. How much have you consumed yourself, sugar or salt, over the last 4 months? Look around the room. Nobody. Do you know?
Me,
in terms of money?
I don't take sugar, so zero cost.
Okay.
But salt, no.
Okay. Okay, so that's interesting on sugar. But the fact is, a 4-month period is a long time. A farmer's production cycles for one crop is generally a 4-month period. And most farmers are not producing just one crop. Smallholder farmers, it's a lifestyle. They're producing many different crops. When you finally take your product to market, do you actually know the price of those tomatoes? How much it cost you to produce those potatoes? So generally people go to market and go with the market price in their area. But if there were tools that enable them to say, in those 4 months, it cost me X, Y, Z, and I harvested 100 kilos, therefore my price of potatoes is 10 shillings a kilo, and the price at the market is 9 shillings, I'm in the wrong business. I should be doing something else. Or it was 10 shillings and the price is 20, can I bring my price down? And then start looking at the maths. Most farmers don't do the math because the period is so long. The same way we don't do the math in terms of our own consumption in our homes over a long period of time. So some of those are the challenges that I think that technology can help to fix.
3 last questions. Yes, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah? 1, 2, 3. You can start from there. Please. You start. You go ahead.
All right. Okay. My name is Omboi Wahome. Thank you so much for what you've shared. I feel really inspired. But I mostly feel perturbed, especially with the statistics you've given us concerning the human health space. And I just wanted to find out from you as to what are you doing about creating that awareness. You've talked to developers about creating apps that will probably bring some sort of awareness to the consumers. But you, well, I can tell that you're not a developer. What are you doing? Or what is Kenya Organic?
She's here.
She's
here.
Oh, she's here. So other than such kind of talks, is there anything else that you're doing? Or probably...
The iCow product is on sustainable agriculture. We're teaching farmers how to produce sustainably without using pesticides and things that are in synthetic inputs. So what we're trying to do is address that from the production end through farmers increasing their knowledge, increasing their productivity and their incomes, and then the products coming onto the market are cleaner. Because it costs to buy these inputs. And if we can teach farmers not to take on that cost, it's not rocket science. So that's what I do personally. And then talk to people like you.
Next one, here, sir.
Okay, we can share her space. Because my name is Judy. I work for the Controller of Budget, and I'm a part-time lecturer. So you mentioned about the shortage of developers. And being in the space where you need developers, what would you advise us who are in the development stage, who are also lecturers, to what is lacking in the space? You are saying there's shortage of developers, that is one. Second, sustainability of iCow. Because like in the communities, you find mainly they can continue sustainability, how long, so that you can stay with the farmer or the community of farmers for a while, lest now they stay with you for some time and they go back to pesticides and back to maybe quicker production and much more economies of scale. Thank you.
I'll talk about sustainability first. The sustainability of farmers, sorry, your sustainability of us as a company or the sustainability of farmers? Sorry, I just lost my thought there again. Okay. Okay. Let's take the example of the farmers who've increased their milk yield. Yeah? Why would you go back to treating your animals differently if you suddenly saw the potential? If you've increased your milk yield, and we've got data that shows farmers have increased their milk yield from between 50 to 150%. If you've been getting 4 liters of milk and you're suddenly getting 10, why would you resort to default? You know what I'm saying? So it's about the value of your product. What value is your product bringing? If we can create the same value in terms of production, it's cost you less, you're producing good yields of crops, why would you go back to a higher input and producing maybe less or maybe the same, a higher cost? Yeah? And then the question of developers. What I found in this space is that young developers very quickly want to become consultants. And for me, I honestly feel that the two things that I said about subject matter expertise and getting to know your users, it's really important. It's not about the technology. It's not about, you know, what you can do with the technology. It's about solving that problem, and it can be any tool that you use. I find that from my experience with developers, a lot of developers want to go into that space of becoming consultants because they can make more money there. But with new products that come onto the market, having very expensive developers puts a big problem into sustainability of the product, and the product even meeting the light of day. I would argue that developers should look at it as part of a different journey, a journey of being able to get to know the subject matter with people that you work with, and becoming consultants later. I mean, in my kind of way of thinking, consultants happen like, you know, when they're like 50 more. The idea that we have so many young consultants, but at the end of the day, hugely expensive. Just like in Ndemo, yeah. You know? So I think that what I'm trying to say there is not that developers shouldn't make money, but they should also invest in getting to know their subject matter expertise. And sometimes that means coming into a specific sector or field a little bit cheaper and able to learn. Does that make sense to you? Yeah?
Okay. I have 2 questions. One is probably the way you talked about the role of like content creators in the agricultural sector. Is there probably also like a market for them, like animators and stuff like that, in maybe like the health sector in terms of how the two link, in terms of like creating content that advises people on diet and stuff like that? And yeah. Second question is more like personal. If you wanted like to sort of start moving more towards like an organic diet, what are like the first steps you to take? Because now I'm extremely worried. I mean, I thought that the market I used to go shopping here had like organic food, but now I'm like thinking twice. I'm like, I'll always be looking at food and I'm like, is this organic? Is this not organic? They're created like, you know, chemicals and stuff like that. Yeah.
Next question, then we.
Hello, my name is Tom Okumu. I've got 2 questions. One is about how do you get grounded and focused in your core business for startups? Number 2, how do you get the attention of their strategic partners, especially if they are big angel investors, and also, yeah, anybody strategic for your idea just to partner? How do you get, because most of them are not that easily reachable. Thank you.
Have you started with the Uweso Fund? Ama, no. You want to look for English sounding?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So market for animation content within the ag space and the health space. I've not specifically looked in the health space, so I can't answer you on that. But I do believe that the market for content in the ag space is going to be growing because more products across the world are always going to be looking for content. So the conference that I came from, the content was being developed by a university who were putting it out there for free. But again, quality. If you come up with content that is of great quality that can be used on different products, get it out there, come to people like us and see if we can make a plan on how you can do it where it becomes economically viable for you to do so.
Actually, even Habitat can pay you if you created an animation on our garbage, you know, how it goes to Kariobank, how people grow green vegetables which come, you know. I don't know whether they are organic or something, but we eat them. They would actually be able to pay for it. It's just that nobody has not, the whole city is thinking. And we need to find somebody who doesn't speak, but tells us our mistakes. And we don't fault them for telling us the truth.
So there's that market. If I look at our videos, we have videos on our website and we send farmers Bitly links so that they can go and watch the videos. So there's that other market where you can embed your videos or animations into products and services. Where do you get organic food? I think there are a couple of organic markets that happen in various places. When I had my shop, we would do deliveries. There are other people that do deliveries. There's the organic market, unfortunately, it's down in Karen, and then they do a very elitist thing, and they've got a market in the US Embassy and in the UN or something. But how do we get organic food? Do you have any land where you are? Do you have any land? Where you live now? Yeah, even a patch as big as a screen. You can produce stuff. So the safest bet is get into your own production. It's not difficult. There are certain things that you might eat every day that are really easy to grow. Spinach, lettuce, herbs, really, really easy to grow. And they don't generally get affected by pests. So you can get into your own production on some things. And then when you're going into a store to buy things, it would be really great if, again, there was a campaign or something where you could go in and ask the people in the store where they have their safe product, why then they don't have safe product in the stores.
Don't know.
Yeah, they do know. So why did I pull out of Nakumat? Eventually I closed my shop and I pulled out of distributing, although some of these suppliers are still distributing to various areas. It was always an uphill battle to try and keep, and I say, and it comes to the question asked by the gentleman over here, how do you stay focused on your core objective? There is so much that can pull you in different directions. I would love to be part of a much bigger awareness creation and a push in terms of the supermarkets, etc., in terms of forcing them to bring in safe food, but you can't do everything. But there is a need for it to be done, and there are organizations here who are doing it who could be advised to do it perhaps a little bit differently.
How do you stay focused on your idea? That is what Okumu's question.
Oh, I fight with that every day. Yeah. I've got a lot of ideas. I fight with that every day. I have a mentor. His name is Mr. Michael Mithika. And he always just pulls me back into focus, and he keeps pulling me back into focus. I've got 1,001 ideas, 1,001 different applications that I'm working on and doing whatever it is. But he helps us as a company to try and stay really, really focused. What is harder is to take that advice against your gut feeling that's saying, no, you've got to do this. But it is important. And then strategic partners. Go to them. But go to them with something, understand them, study them. What do they need? What do they have? What advantage are you going to bring to them? If you're going there expecting them to help you and you don't fill any of those boxes for them, you're wasting your time. If you go to them, what did we bring to Safaricom? We brought stickiness to their network. Farmers are registering their animals. They're not going to take them off tomorrow. They're registering. They're there for cycles of time. Farmers is registering themselves for information. We bought stickiness, we bought masses, and we'll bring more masses. So what is it that you're going to bring to your strategic partners? What do we bring for our partner, the Alea Foundation? They are a philanthropic investor, and they look at impact on the ground. We bring them impact. They want to know that for every dollar spent, a good tangible amount of it is coming out in returns, in value for the user at the end, increased incomes for people on the ground. There will be other partners who will come to us where the value they want is different. The value is environmental, based on some environmental ground. So it's really important. Study your potential strategic partners. What is it? What is the hook that you have? What is your offering to them?
It's a last question on SMS. Someone wants to know, they want to go into beef farming. What methods, organic, for fattening you can propose?
For fattening, the best beef production, the natural.
Would they use iCow to be told how to?
We haven't got information on, in terms of the beef production in this country, we're looking at pastoralists. So a lot of the information around cows is relevant, but in terms of fattening up cows, we believe that grass-fed beef and pasture-fed beef are the best. And then it's not about your cows, it's about your pastures, looking after your pastures and making sure that your soils are good and that your soils are actually producing the grass or what else you might be growing for them. In terms of feeds for animals, we've got information on the different fodders and forage that farmers can grow. Beef production in many developed countries, and I'll close on this, it's quite shocking. And I wouldn't want us to go that way. There is what you call feedlot production of beef, where animals simply are put in an area this big can probably take 150 animals, and they're fed by a trough around the boundary, and they're fed grains and antibiotics. The reason that they're fed the antibiotics is because their systems were not developed to perpetually eat and digest grain. The rumen system of a cow is developed to break down grass, green stuff, not grain, but it's cheaper to use the grains because of the global production of grains to feed animals, and they will get fat. It doesn't mean that the meat you're getting is healthy. The animal itself ends up with acidic issues in its stomach that bore holes into its stomach, and they're generally very sick. So feedlot systems are generally supported by the pharmaceutical industry with massive amounts of antibiotics that again come into our blood into the human food chain. There's a very good book, if anybody wants to read a very good book, Michael Pollan has done a lot of studies on this specific area. I think it is called We Are What We Eat. If it's not We Are What We Eat. Oh no, it's called The Omnivore's Dilemma. The Omnivore's Dilemma, and it's our dilemma about what we're producing and how it's impacting on our health. So on that note, I'd say read that, and yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Actually, we want to thank once more, Kofi Kidogo. We would ask you to, if you would agree another time to discuss the area of big data and how we can leverage on data to improve on productivity. I'll get some other person to help you, Sarah Menka, if you would agree at some point, not, because in January we already have somebody from the World Bank, maybe towards, God willing, March, April. It's a huge area. If she started talking about it, it's much bigger than what we have discussed here. So I want to thank you all for coming, and I would hand over to Sam. Remember to thank our sponsors. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, why don't we appreciate them once again? Thank you so much, Sue, and thank you so much, Dr. Ndemo. I really appreciate you guys for coming through, and I think we've all learned something valuable today. I've also learned something, like Joe said, I'm actually scared to not go buy veggies. Don't know what you're buying, you know. So to the participants and all of you who've attended today, we just like to encourage you to give us feedback on what you're learning through these forums every month. and what you're implementing from the knowledge you're getting from these forums. Do let us know through our email, through the community blog, on the IAP community blog. Find our way and give us feedback. Yeah? And also, you could let us know who you want to see come and speak here in the future forums in the coming year. We really appreciate your contributions on that. Just a reminder, again, the next forum for January is on the 17th, so we'll have an Eventbrite app, probably in deck, for you to sign on in advance. And something I'm forgetting. What am I forgetting? Oh yes, we'd like to thank our sponsors. Chase Bank have been sponsoring this forum every month and making sure that every month we have this Entrepreneurs Forum. So thank you so much, Chase Bank, for the opportunity.
And just say that this Chase Bank is ready to support you if you had a wonderful idea, or if you had a serious problem that some of you can share and solve the problem, and you get the funding. And there are others whom I can't say because they did not buy Mandasi. Those we can talk about later. Thank you.
Thank you. From the iHub, we'd like to thank you again for coming and for continually coming for these forums. Do continue to come. Let other people know about it. Spread the love, spread the message. And from us, with a lot of love, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
So a Merry Christmas too from...
There's iCow business cards on this table here, so as you're walking out, you could just pick one, or you can actually pass them around to you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know what I...